So ladies and gentlemen, we are at Go Math 11.5, and today we're taking it one step further, and we're talking about area, but we're talking about area in 3 dimensions. So the way I want to explain this is if I have let's say a square, and I'm going to do my best to draw this here. All right, so let's say we have that, right? Parallelogram, and let's pretend it's laying flat, right? That's the skills that I bring as an artist. It's laying flat, and let's say it's 3 by 4. Well, we know that the area equals length times width, or let's change that to base times height, right? Area equals base times height. 3 times 4, which is 12. So now that I know that that flat surface, two-dimensional surface, is 12 units squared, because I'm going two different ways, I can take it one step further. What happens if I take that and I pull it up? Pretend that that's really well drawn, okay? So I pull that whole object and I just take it up. Really what I'm doing is I'm taking this 12 square units, inches, whatever I'm dealing with, and I'm bringing it up, let's say, another 4. So I have 4 of them. What that translates to is no longer area, but volume. And volume is what is the inside of this. Volume equals base times height times width. Now sometimes they'll call that length. It's fine. You have the 3 different dimensions. So we're solving it in 3 dimensions, which means that our area is going to be units cubed because we're in 3 dimensions, not 2. And in this case, this would be 3 times 4 times 4. 12 times 4, or 48 units cubed. 3. All right, so I have 48 units cubed. Please do not guess when it comes to volume. I want to see the formula, I want to put in the numbers, and then I want to write it out, right? Because if I'm guessing, I look and I say I have 3, I have 4, I have 4, that's very deceptive because I end up with something like 48 and you think, wow, that is a massive number. There's no way that fits in here. But in fact, it does. So the first part of the problem is to take the numbers, volume equals base times height times length, or base times height times width, whatever you want to call it. It's the 3 different dimensions multiplied together. And I end up with my overall volume, right? The second part of this might be, well, what happens if I take a small cube that's like a half a unit and I want to put them inside this box? So how many can I pack inside this box? Well, if I know that this cube is a half a unit, all right, so it's a half a unit by a half a unit by a half a unit. I need the volume of that cube. We are so tempted to sit and go, oh, well, it's 48 and these are a ½ inch wide, so therefore it's 48 divided by half. And I get a number that doesn't make any sense, right? So I want to know what the volume of this little cube is. I'm going to make my imaginary little cube right in here. Let's pretend that's really well drawn, right? Because I'm a great artist. Now, I know that volume equals base times height times width, or 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2. 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4, times 1/2 is 1/8. And you go, wait a minute, Mr. W, if it's a ½ inch wide and a ½ inch deep and a ½ inch high, how could it be an 1/8 volume? It is, trust me. Again, you need to write these out. You need to start with the formula, plug in the numbers. Otherwise, it won't make sense if you start guessing, okay? So it's 1/8. So I know that I have 1/8 volume cubes. And if I have 48 units total, well, I ask myself, how many 1/8 units, some number, equals 48? Well, instead of multiplying by 1/8, I would divide by 1/8, divide by 1/8. So the problem I end up with is 48 divided by 1/8. 48 over 1. Divided by 1/8, we're going to keep it, change it, flip it, which is times 8 over 1. And I end up with 48 times 8. 8 times 8 is 64. 8 times 4 is 32, plus 6 is 38. And I get 384. 384 cubes will fit in that particular box. If you don't believe me, realize that they're a ½ inch wide. So I'm going to get 6 wide by 8 deep by 8 high. 6 times 8 times, wow, that really does add up to quite a lot. So again, you want to take a look at another problem like this. If I have a box and I'm solving it, first thing I want to do is draw my jewelry box. 3.5 units by 1.5 units by 2 units. And you might say, well, which one is 1.5, which one is 3.5, which one is 2? It doesn't really matter because I can multiply them in any order. So when I multiply them through, I get my total volume. So 3.5 times 1.5 times 2. I'm going to make this into the C method. 2 times 3 plus 1, 7 over 2, times 3 over 2, times 2 over 1. So I end up with 2 times 2 times 1 is 4. 7 times 3 is 21 times 2 is 42. 42 fourths, 4 goes into 40 10 times with 2 fourths left over. So my answer being 10.5. Okay, so that is my volume right there. So it's 10.5 units cubed because it's my volume. Now it says how many 1/2 side length cubes will fit in there. So I'm going to take my 10.5 and divide it by whatever the volume would be. So I ask myself, Mr. W, should you guess about this or should you draw it out? Draw it out. 1/2 by 1/2 by 1/2 equals 1/8. So it's 10.5 divided by 1/8. So we're going to keep it, change it, flip it, and I get, let me make a little room here. I'm going to erase my 10.5. I'll put it in here. Volume equals, so that way we know it. I'm going to keep 10.5, and let's make this an improper fraction. 2 times 10 is 20. 21 over 2 times, keep it, change it, flip it, 8 over 1. I'm going to simplify before I verify. 2 goes into 2 1 times, it goes into 8 4 times. And when I multiply across, 21 times 4 gives me 84. And there are 84 cubes that are 1/2 by 1/2 by 1/2 that will fit inside a 10.5 unit squared box. So there are 2 steps to this. The important thing is reading your directions, starting with your formula and writing it out. When you read the directions, you start with the formula, you write the whole thing out, and you take your time to solve. Use your formula sheets, use your scratch paper, use your calculators. Check your work. There is no way that you're going to do this in your head, and even in just holding a calculator, punching in the numbers, you're guessing whether or not you can get this right in your head. So again, take your time, start with the formula, and then solve for the answer.